Welcome back to another episode of Sexy Marriage Radio, alongside my wife, Pam.
Always good to be here.
Each and every week, having straightforward, honest conversations about all things marriage. And typically, we land and we'll for sure spend some time in the category of our sex lives and how that plays out in marriage and how it's a language and how you do sex is how you do life. There's a lot of taglines we've used over the 14 years of doing this. But today we're going to do an episode on the idea of mind mapping, which we've talked about in the past because it's a term and a framework built on from Schnarch that he kind of coined the idea of based on the theory of the mind. But now we're getting way too in the weeds. We're going to pull some information from an upcoming book, actually, that we'll just kind of walk through.
Tell us more, Dr. Allen.
Well, the manuscript is done for book number 2, and it's an exciting thing to be done and have this thing starting to take a whole lot more shape. For clarity for those listening,
Corey's writing a book, and so that some of this is pulling from that.
Correct.
It's not just a book from
some unknown dude.
Yeah. Corey's writing this book, and so we're really excited about it. Yeah.
And so what we'll spend some time talking about in the regular version is just how mind mapping what it actually is and how it's really at play and what we need to do about it.
And how it's helpful, how you read it, how you're already doing it.
And the pitfalls therein.
The life application to it.
And then on the extended content, which is deeper, longer, and there's no ads, you can subscribe at smr.fm/academy. We're going to talk about how mind mapping plays out in sex. Because it's one of the most prolific areas where mind mapping can become problematic or beneficial because it's so much more intense.
Like any other tool, you can use it for good or bad.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so here's what we're talking about is the idea that this is one of the phrases I've used a lot over the years of doing this job as a marriage and family therapist, is that most couples don't have trouble communicating, actually.
While they think they do, they come to you because we just can't communicate.
Right. They don't fail because they can't communicate. It actually is, I've used the phraseology of it's handling the message better. But then if you bring in the concept of mind mapping, it's also problematic because we think we can't communicate because in actuality, we're just pretending not to know.
Yeah. So what you've historically said a lot is, it's not that you don't communicate. You communicate just fine.
Right.
You just don't like the message that's coming at you.
Right.
And it's frustrating. And then how do I handle that? And what do we do next?
And this can go both ways, right? Because there's this element of you and I could be having a conversation about something and my mind is reading something. And some of this is subconscious, right? I'll get cued in on some things. I'll start to feel a little heated up, or exposed or abandoned or threatened or whatever. And it's all on the deep levels of our mind. But then those will trigger emotions and feelings. And so we're talking about how this all blends together with mind mapping, because it's not mind reading.
No.
Very, very clear.
No.
It's not, I know what you're thinking.
No.
Instead, it's about understanding I have an idea to be able to track what's going on with you. I may not be right completely with what I'm tracking, but based on context and history and repetitivity and all of that, then there's likelihood I am in the right vicinity, at least the ballpark with what I'm picking up.
Yeah. I mean, you hear the phrase, read the room.
Right. That fits the same concept.
If you're reading a room, then you're understanding the only person in the room might be your spouse.
Right.
Are you reading the room?
And so one of the things that's imperative if we want to use mind mapping for good is to realize what's going on with me in this, not so much what's going on with you. What am I doing with what I'm mapping? Right. Because I can use this as, this one way to think about it is this can be a superpower that I use for good or for evil.
Okay.
And so when you can start to realize that this isn't mind reading, this isn't anything about, I know what you're thinking. I know your exact thoughts. Instead, it's best gut, my inner inference. That's my best gut inference of what's going on with what I'm seeing in you. Right. I mean, so this is that element of,
and then what do you do with that?
Right. This is that element of you come home. And we've had several examples of this as I've been thinking about this. We've had several examples of this over the last couple of days because I was gone all last week traveling. And then since I've been home, it's been a little chaotic reentry because there's a lot of things going on and we're both tired or we're both distracted and so I could have this idea of, hey, I'm really hoping something sexual will happen, or I'm really hoping we can just hang out, or I'm really hoping we can go walk, or we can do something. And I'm reading you. And what I can do is read you and blame rather than, okay, what do I do with what I'm reading? This is how we start to use mind mapping better. Because what's being exposed in me with what I'm reading? Because one of the truisms in this whole concept is you can't turn mind mapping off. Dr. Schnarch would say it usually starts in a human being around the age 2 to 4 is when it really starts. They've been able to figure out that's when children are getting an idea of how to read their parents.
How will they react? Are they upset? Are they in a good, or
right,
whatever?
And so it's running in the background and the foreground as this goes on and on and on, where I'm able to track mood. I'm able to track safety. I'm able to track possible outcomes of things, because every single one of us, likely, if you were raised in any kind of volatile family, and I don't mean that in just a physical, verbal outrage, tirade, all that. I just mean it as a parent's mood dictated the tone of the home. Okay. If you were raised in that kind of environment, you're able to track and get a pretty good idea of a parent's mood without even hearing anything from them. You can walk in and see them, or they walk in and you're like, oh, run for the covers, or it's safe. That's mind mapping.
Okay.
Right. And we do this also as spouses. We do this with our kids as parents. We're able to read it. We can tell if they had a good day or not.
Yeah. Yeah. How much huffing and puffing is done? How hard did something get put down on the table when they walked in the door?
Right. And so here's where it becomes problematic is the core problem becomes, what do I do if I choose not to know or act like I don't know what I'm reading? And this is where it becomes important of what's going on with me as a dynamic's unfolding. What do I do with what I'm intuiting, with what I'm seeing, with what I'm feeling? How am I in tune with me, with what I'm reading?
Why am I ignoring it? Why am I choosing not to acknowledge it?
Right. Because here's one, this would be the classic example. If you come home, or no, let's switch I'm going to switch the side of this. I come home and you're like, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm fine. But deep down, the tone and the body posture does not match what I'm saying. So then it becomes, what do you do with that? How do you handle what was just communicated? Because everything else says otherwise on I'm fine. This also happens a whole lot when an I don't know is proffered as an answer of something. So I was thinking we would go do this. What do you think? I don't know. Right? There's so many.
What kind of response is that? I don't know. Really? You have zero response to that. Yeah. Okay.
So then it's what you're faced with is what do you do with that as the person that's receiving this when everything in your map is saying otherwise? Mm-hmm. Because it usually elicit things in us. And this is where we start to go off the rails, because then we become detective, we become investigative, we become prosecutor-ish of, no, hold on, because now I'm just trying to prove a point of what I'm reading that it's right.
Should I not be a detective and say, really, you seem like you're upset about something?
That's curious rather than detective.
How is the difference between being curious and being a detective? We can get caught up in,
okay, here's mind mapping going on right now between us of it's semantics of the words. We can get caught up in that rather than I can often use this, that what I'm actually trying to do is gotcha of what I'm reading is right, rather than, okay, wait, what's going on? I'm not reading the same thing as the I don't know. You know what I mean?
Okay, I still don't understand the difference between curious and detective.
Fair. Fair. To me, detective would, okay, I hear what you're saying.
I'm trying to uncover a crime if I'm a detective. It's not just from the goodness.
Right. Well, you're
of
trying to figure, whereas
curiosity.
curious is, I hear it more as I'm trying to just be open to what else could be going on and get the data
Okay.
rather than I'm trying to solve something, because sometimes I can solve something and my desire to try to solve something is to a detriment of us, because I just want to understand how things work rather than how's it impacting us.
Yeah.
What do I do with that?
Okay.
Just because I know the solution to a problem doesn't make the problem go away in marriage. That's one of the truisms I believe. Just because I know where you're coming from doesn't change the problem.
Yeah. I don't know that knowing where you're coming from is a solution to a problem.
Exactly. But we tend to get caught up in marital communication with that fact of, if we would just understand each other, the problem will go away. Rather than, no, it won't. It'll
help me figure out how to deal with it.
Right. Because I have to face responsibility of the dynamic. I need to face impact. I need to face the dynamic of what's going on in a partner, on how they're positioning themselves. Because if somebody's playing the I don't know game, let's go with that as an example.
Okay.
So you come home and hey, I can't even think of just a minor.
Where do you want to go for dinner?
Okay. Well, I want to go something a little bit deeper than that, where it truly is, I don't know. And that's what they're saying.
Okay.
So it's either they are confused and they don't know, or they know, but they don't want to say it. Right? They have a real feeling about something, but they don't want to answer it. And so we can play this whole confusion game, but it's to the detriment of both of us. Rather than, I could kick into this idea of, wait, I need to solve this. How about I talk you into something? I'm trying to all that, or I need to face what's actually happening here of, well, if you don't know, because you haven't given any forethought to something, okay, well, how does that impact me? If you're doing it with ulterior motives on the I don't know, because you don't want to take responsibility for something, well, how does that impact me? I need to face and drill it down to, how am I just facing the impact more rather than the motives behind it?
Okay.
You follow what I'm saying?
I'm thinking through it. I don't have anything to chime in here for. I'm just saying I'm thinking through it.
No, I get you. So let's kind of switch it, a slight pivot, because here's some ways that mind mapping can start to it'll make things go sideways. Right? When you talk about this dynamic, because the whole point of this, and let's just get ahead of this. The whole point of this segment is, how do we get better at settling ourselves down with what I'm reading and then addressing the impact of it, not trying to solve some equation about what I'm reading. I'm just being better with myself in the dynamic, because that's differentiation 101. I just handle me.
Okay.
And then I position myself better to handle whatever the dynamic and impact of things are on me.
Okay.
Okay. And so here's ways that mind mapping can go sideways. One, we've kind of touched on these others, but let's just point them out. Over certainty, where I'm mapping something in you and I'm now over certain. I know exactly, no, because of this and this and this. And so you could say, I'm fine. And I'm reading it as, no, you're not. And I got years and years of data that prove my point, that I know I'm right. I know you're not fine, when there can be times when actually you're fine. But what's being exposed in that is, I want the ability to confirm what I'm reading is right, rather than, what if I'm not completely accurate on this one? And what's being exposed in me is my own certainty of things and my own ability to settle down in the midst of uncertainty. The same kind of thing can happen when a reaction happens that's curt or abrupt, and I have a history of reacting to that, because I read you as, well, now you're mad at me about this, and now you're upset about this, rather than, wait, that's what it could have been, but is that what it is now? I don't know. How do I just settle myself down, let the time pass, deal with the impact if need to, and move on? Because mind mapping is one of these fluid kind of things that's always going on, but I need to be very careful to not always think and be overly certain about, I've got it figured out. I have them mapped to a T.
Yeah, you might.
Because there will be times when you won't.
Yeah, you might still be certain about spouse 2.0, right? You're still stuck in what they used to do all the time, and maybe they don't do what they used to do all the time.
Although what they used to do all the time is still buried in the operating system. And this is why it becomes problematic, because if I get something that's exposed based on old data, but I feel like I'm more evolved, and you're reading something that's based on old data, I have trouble admitting the fact that old data could still be there, even though it's used differently. It's not weaponized as much. It's not as smoke screened as much, or what. I don't use it as ways to avoid things, but it is still there because that's an old pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So realizing that I need to just be more mindful of how overly certain am I as I start to be in tune with what's going on around me. I also need to look at it as sometimes my mind mapping is more about my own anxiety driven control, that I'm reading things too much because I don't want to have to manage myself. I'm trying to just manage your mood with what I'm reading.
Is that about trying to manage yourself, or is that about here's how I would operate, so I'm assuming this is how you would operate as well?
No, it's more on, I'm trying to think. So since I got back, we were sitting around together, just kind of hanging out, watching the Olympics, and you were working on something, and I reached over and just tried to fix something. And you're like, I got this. Don't fix it for me.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just an instinctual thing I would do because you're struggling, and you had some subtle cues of it wasn't working the way you were wanting it to work. It wasn't coming as easy as you wanted it to come. And so I'm like, whatever. And I just reached over and grabbed it, and you jumped in. My instinctual reaching over and grabbing it and solving it for you is based on mind mapping.
Yeah.
Right. Her reaction back to me is based on mind mapping of stop doing what you do. Let me figure this out, because you've been on a thread more lately of, I need to understand some things that I've not done lately, technologically or whatever it might be, things that you normally have not had a history of. I want to jump in and figure this out, because you wouldn't spend the time or the energy for it, partly because you didn't need to. But there's been elements now of you are. And so my wanting to reach over and solve that for you is based on a mind map, but it's also driven by not necessarily always good motives by me. Some of it could be, I want to be very, very helpful. But some of it can be, I don't want to deal with the mood and your frustration. So just solve it.
There you go.
Right?
Now you know, folks.
Well, but that's the underneath of where this is actually operating. And so when you can realize that that's not about what I'm mapping in you, it's what's going on with me, because my instinctual reach over and do that for you and us, quote unquote, is anxiety driven of me, not your anxiety.
Yeah, your fixer mode.
Right. It's the same thing we can do with kids that are struggling with something. We step in and solve it rather than having to let them have to solve it themselves or face it themselves. That's anxiety driven. That's our anxiety, not their struggle.
Yes, we help those who ask for help. Don't help them if they don't ask.
That was the phrase you said right back to me.
It was.
Actually.
It was.
Right. Another way this can go sideways is, best way to describe it is self-abandonment, that I'm tracking so intensely, I'm just completely unaware of what's going on with me while I'm tracking.
Yeah.
I'm not even in tune with what's going on. What am I feeling based on the situation as it's unfolding? I'm just so into attunement of everything around me.
That seems like it might be the one that allows it to escalate quicker, because I'm just not paying attention potentially to.
Well, sure, because you know who's paying attention that you're not paying attention? The other person.
The other person, yeah.
Yeah, because again, that may not be conscious, but deep down, this is where the phrases of "you always do that" can be reactionary, because it's true. It's built on context of there's truth to that. Yes, I do that a lot. So that makes it completely go sideways. And then the last one, we've already kind of hinted around this, is the idea of weaponized insight, where I'm doing it as a prosecutor. It's a gotcha. I'm scoring points. I'm proving I'm right, exposing something. Because I'm more driven on the I want to be right than what about actually connecting? What about actually having a deeper interaction, a deeper exposing of things?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if I'm always right, then I'm married to someone who's always wrong.
Right.
Well, that's no fun.
Right. And so how do we switch this to a growth edge is kind of the way to think about this. How do we shift this to where we realize, okay, the point of this is my own growth.
Absolutely.
Right? And so we'll do this on just kind of a global, and then on the extended content, we'll go in a little bit deeper. So as globally, one of the first things you need to do if this is resonating at all, or if you're totally confused, feedback at sexymarriageradio.com, 214-702-9565, either one, let us know, and we'll keep trying to unpack this to make it more clear. Because what I've discovered when I talk with clients about this, it's a little easier to drill in because I got real-time data right in front of me.
Yeah, they're personal, real life examples. Yes.
But there is an element of times where it's like we're walking around in the fog, and then all of a sudden the fog lifts, and that's what you start seeing. Oh, now you start realizing I'm mapping everything all the time, and you're starting to become more aware of somebody just walked in, and man, their presence really made me bristle. Okay, what's that about? Rather than not what's going on with them as much as what's going on with me on why that just happened, because some map just overlaid another one.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this for work right now and how that happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so this happens always, every relationship. It can even happen with your animals. It's just they don't map you as much as we map them, but we have maps of them based on how everybody in our life interacts. Okay. But so how do we go from confusion to courage? Because that's what this really takes to face it, is how do I get courageous? And I have to first realize that my spouse isn't a mystery, actually. We often throw around this banter of, you'll never understand a woman. You'll never understand your spouse. You'll never understand a man, whatever it might be. And no, you actually kind of do. They're not really a mystery. Question becomes, how do I own what I already perceive of them and face them as they really are?
I was going to say, is my perception really accurate?
It will bear out in time if it is or isn't. But oftentimes it's based more on accuracy than inaccuracy. The question becomes, what do I do with that? And so now it's learning to actually face and love them as they are. Because a lot of times what we'll do is we will skew the data on who I wish you will become by how I interact with you, rather than how do I just face you as you are, right? And the other thing is to realize that strong, great marriages, they're not built on perfect communication. This ability to have this perfect communication, nirvana, that's not what creates it. Instead, it's seeing clearly what's going on and then choosing what I do with it, with what I see. It's interacting so that my actions align with my words, right? I'm listening to, there's a Mel Robbins' Let Them Theory book. Okay. I'm listening to that. I'm finishing that up this week. And
the name of the book
is the Let Them Theory.
Okay.
And it's along the same lines. And I'm loving it because it fits real well with what we're talking about here. She just uses different terminology, but it's the idea of let their actions show who they are. Let them, right? And she was the chapter I just listened to was on dating. So it was for younger people or in the dating scene. And if you got somebody that's like, oh yeah, well, let's go out for a date, and they never actually set up a date, believe what they say by what they do. Don't believe what they say by what they say.
Yeah. Clearly they're saying, let's not go on a date.
Same thing with spouses. This is where it gets more insidious on what it exposes in us, though. That a spouse says, yeah, I really do want to do X, Y, Z, but they never set it up. Trust that. Trust what they do, not what they say. This is where mind mapping starts to come into play on how is it congruent or not, because then you can start seeing who they are and how they might be skewing some things, avoiding some things, whatever. And it's not, I need to gotcha on it. I need to just address that better. Or that's where the courage comes into play, because then it comes down to, what do I choose to do with this? And then how do I interact more aware of my own anxieties, uncertainties, fear, and not let that run the show, but actually deal with what I'm facing better because I'm handling me better.
Yeah. Well, and some of these things that you're talking about could be things that the spouse says they want for themselves. It could be things that they say they want for you combined as a couple. I mean, I think of things I've said, right? I really want to take dance classes together. Have I ever set that up? No.
Nope, not yet.
And at first, I got negative responses from you, right? Like I didn't, whatever, I'm not interested in that. And then finally, not finally, but later on, you were like, I will do it with you. You just have to be the one to set it up.
I'm just not excited enough to be the one to lead the charge to make it happen.
Have I? And to this day, I still haven't made that happen. And so what does that say to you about the importance of it? Number one, in my life, on a number of different fronts, not just about other things, right?
This is where it starts to cue into other areas, because we often can be best intentioned people in one area, not realizing I also am that in other areas too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my spouse knows.
Yeah.
So what do I do to shore up as much as I can and let that be what I'm teaching?
Yeah.
Let me be better at teaching, because that's the other side of Mel Robbins' theory. It's the let them theory, which is basically just let people be who they are, and then let me practice my own agency and how I address them, which is the exact same thing we're talking about today, of how do I address what I'm seeing from me, from my stance, from my solidness, from my integrity, from my character, and out of goodness and well-meaning. And so how am I living that? Because this is the best way to do this is when I'm settled. Like if let's go back to how we started this. I come home from the end of a day or come out from the office after a group and you're like, how you doing? And I'm fine. And you hear that as, no, that doesn't line up. What you said doesn't line up with what I'm reading. So you could easily, if you're unsettled, now it's a fight. Who's right about what was read? Or was I caught with what you know, or whatever, whatever it might be on my words don't line up with my actions, versus, oh, okay. I don't know if I'm not reading it that way. And it's a very settled statement. That's exposing that I could maybe react poorly to, or, yeah, maybe. And then maybe it comes back, or maybe at least logs into my own brain of, what was that about? What was going on? Was I just blowing it off? Or was it, and now your settledness changes our dynamic in that moment, versus if you're anxious about something, it changes the dynamic in a negative way. Does that make sense? Because it's the idea of when anxiety is one of the most contagious things there are in a marriage, calm can spread equally too, though. It just takes more reserve and resolve to have calm spread, because it won't spread as fast as anxiety does.
No. Keep your FM DJ voice on.
Late night FM DJ.
As you're chatting, yes.
But so the goal is, all of this isn't to become a better investigator or prosecutor or detective even. It's to become a better and steadier you. You just settle yourself down based on what you're reading and what you're hearing, and you address it, even if that means, you know what? I don't read it that way yet, and I don't want to get into a fight about it, so let's pick this up later. And then you just move on to something else, because even that disrupts the system. And most of the time, if you have these patterns of repetitive things, disrupting the system is step one. And the only way you disrupt it is by you do something different, not your spouse.
Yeah, don't wait for them to do that.
Yeah, because that's ceding the power, and it'll go wherever they want to go. They're not leading the charge like you're trying to lead your charge for you in your relationship.